anytime you're a first, yes, there were a lot of women in prominent positions in television news, but no single woman had had this job. So I think that in and of itself was a big deal. I think I had become, fairly well known when I worked on the Today Show. And the whole America's Sweetheart thing, I think in a way worked against me because I think people saw me perhaps as more of a TV personality than a TV journalist. So I think there were many reasons that it was a big deal. Could I do it? Did I have the experience? Did I have the gravitas? I think people forgot about a lot of the serious news I'd covered. And the fact that I was a woman, I was jumping ship, I was going to a whole new network, and probably the most traditional network of all three. So I think that there was a lot of attention. Sometimes in retrospect, I wish I had done fewer interviews, but I think it would have been written about regardless. So I thought if people are going to cover this story, I might as well get my imprimatur on it as well.
And so you're at CBS News, it's really the legacy seat for a news anchor. Did you want to make changes when you started?
Well, I really came over with the understanding that they wanted to revamp the evening news. And by that I mean they wanted to tinker with it, and not just along the edges, but stylistically and content-wise. They wanted it to still be an important newscast, but maybe less formulaic, less predictable, less like the others. So I thought, well, that's really fun creatively. So we tried to do that, but I think we underestimated the risk of trying new things under the bright white spotlight of my coming here as the first woman. So as a result, I think some of the things we tried when we said, oh, cavalierly, we'll see what happens, we'll just try some things. I don't think we understood that we would be so criticized or eviscerated for playing with a format that had been around for years and years and years, and quite frankly, the audience was comfortable with, at least an older audience that wanted a traditional newscast. So there was no guarantee, I think, that if you built it, they would come when it came to changing a newscast. So I think once the ratings started to decline, we went back to a much more traditional newscast. I think it might have been a lot to ask the audience to deal with a new anchor, a female anchor, and by the way, in surveys, I think 13% said they didn't want to watch a female anchor. It was still really the domain of white men. And so to have a new anchor, a different face, and a different format all at once, I think might have been too much. And then some people just didn't like what we were doing. I think the critics, had their knives out because I had had a very successful run at the Today Show, and suddenly I was vulnerable. And I think there's a lot of strange schadenfreude that goes on in our business as well. So I think it was a confluence of reasons that just made it just not work. And that's why we reverted back to a much more traditional newscast. I'm really proud of our newscast. I think the staff here, the producers, the camera crews, the correspondents all do a really good job. But probably if I had known I was coming to anchor a very, very traditional newscast, I might have had second thoughts about taking this job, because the idea of opening it up and doing interviews and making it more accessible and more relaxed and maybe doing something a bit different, that's what excited me and appealed to me about the job. And the notion that I would be setting a great example for women and really sending a message, I hoped, that a woman could be as good at this job as any man. I wanted people to see a female newscaster on the evening news and say, yeah, that's normal. That's not a novelty. This isn't a first. This is acceptable. Women are more than half of the population, and newscasters and on-air reporters, they should look like America. And white men, they're just one part of the country. They don't represent all of us.
So are you comfortable now with where you are?
Yeah, I am. I mean, we definitely had some rough times. I did doing this, and was definitely hazed and criticized, and with a kind of glee that was really hard to understand, to be honest with you. But I kept my blinders on. I decided I was going to be myopically focused on doing the best job I could. I can't control what the critics say. I can't necessarily change CBS News as an institution. All I could really focus on, with which was in my power, was the quality of the work I did. And so that's what I've done. And I'm really proud of the quality of work that I've done, and the whole news division. And the evening news, I think, is consistently an excellent broadcast. I would put it up against my competitors and feel really comfortable with what we were doing almost on a nightly basis. Some nights are better than others. Some nights you think, oh, we should have really done that story. But I'm very proud of the broadcast, and I'm very proud of myself for hanging in there and sticking with it.